The throne hall of Lirai's capital, Vera, loomed with pillars of pale crystal and the hush of ancient expectation. Gossamer tapestries shimmered in the filtered glow, casting patterns of light across the assembled dignitaries. Marcus, a human envoy, stood among the gathered elite, an outsider in dark, formal attire, his presence marked by cautious curiosity and, in some corners, thinly veiled disdain. His gaze, however, remained fixed on the luminous platform at the heart of the hall, where Illyra knelt alone. She was the axis upon which the fate of Liray would turn, a vision of regal poise, her long platinum hair cascading in silken waves, her gown a masterwork of flowing gold and white silk. Emerald eyes gazed ahead, not with pride, but with a quiet strength that suggested burdens carried long before this day. Around her, the air seemed to pulse with the reverberation of the high oracle's chanting, an incantation in a tongue older than memory, rising and falling like distant thunder. Above Elira's bowed head, the coronet of light drifted into being, a diadem woven from pure energy, spinning slowly, casting her features in an ethereal glow. The crowd held its breath, every eye fixed on the soon-to-be sovereign. Yet Marcus's attention flickered to the left, drawn by a chill in his instincts. There, among the Lyraean counselors and nobles, stood Lord Careth. Tall, silver-eyed, his expression carved in ice. Careth's lips twitched in a smile that never touched his eyes, and beside him, half-shadowed, his attendant moved with subtle intent. A glint, the briefest flash from beneath the folds of a ceremonial cloak. Marcus's heart kicked against his ribs as he recognized the outline of a concealed device, its shape unmistakably lethal. Then, a surge of certainty. The threat was not to the hall, but to Illyra herself. In a single, breathless moment, Marcus vaulted the low balustrade, his boots striking the crystalline floor with a crack that shattered the silence. Gasps rippled through the audience, scandal and alarm intermingled. Marcus sprinted toward the dais, each stride echoing in the vast chamber. The high oracle faltered mid-chant, the coronet's glow wavering. All at once, a shimmer split the air. A lance of violet energy, hissing with deadly intent, streaked toward Illyra. Instinct drove Marcus forward. He lunged, arms flung wide, intercepting the bolt. Instead of searing agony, a cold numbness bloomed along his side, spreading outward in icy fingers. Marcus crashed to the floor at Illyra's feet, vision swimming. The hall erupted in pandemonium. Nobles pressed backward, guards surged in, and the healer's emerald robes flashed as they converged. Illyra's composure crumbled. She swept from the dais, heedless of protocol, dropping to her knees beside him. "Marcus!" Her voice, usually so measured, cracked with fear. She pulled him into her lap, her trembling hand cupping his cheek. The coronet of light hovered, forgotten, flickering uncertainly above them. "Illyra," Marcus managed, the edges of his vision darkening. He forced a grin. Always wanted to make an entrance. Her eyes burned, grief and gratitude warring in their depths. "Foolish human," she whispered, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. Around them, the chamber spun into chaos, guards restraining Careth and his attendant, the oracle demanding order, dignitaries shouting accusations. Darkness claimed Marcus, swift and absolute. He awoke to antiseptic tang and the soft hum of alien machinery. Dim azure light slanted through crystalline panels. Pain lanced through his body, strange, hollow pain, like rot where there should be bone and sinew. He shifted, groaning. Monitors flickered, displaying vital signs in Lyraean script. Beyond the transparent partition, Illyra argued with the chief medic, her silhouette rigid with fury. "He saved my life," she insisted. "You will do everything you can." The medic, A gaunt Lyraean whose face was as unreadable as a mask shook his head. "We are doing all we can, Sovereign. The weapon was a genetic disruptor, designed to erase your line, to ensure you would never bear an heir. In him, it finds only chaos. It is not made for human DNA." Elira's fists clenched at her sides. "How long does he have?" The medic's answer was gentle, almost regretful. "Hours. No more." Saren, Elira's advisor, swept into view, his voice low and urgent. "You must distance yourself, Elira. Kareth's supporters already call this human a curse. If he dies—" Elira cut him off, her tone cold as winter steel. "I owe him a debt of life. I will not abandon him." She strode into Marcus's chamber, golden light haloing her form. Marcus, fighting for breath, managed a crooked smile. "Well, I always thought I'd die in some dismal diplomatic mishap, not from alien sabotage in a palace made of crystal." Elira knelt beside the bed, her gown pooling around her like liquid light. "You took a wound meant for me," she said softly. "On Lyrae, that is a debt of life, one that cannot be ignored." He tried to shrug, pain making the gesture feeble. "I'd settle for tossing Kareth into the nearest sun. That seems fair." A flicker of amusement crossed her features, a rare, private smile. "I might allow it, once you are well." He searched her face, uncertain. "Is there anything left to try?" Elira hesitated. "There is a ritual. Forbidden. Ancient. It could heal you, but it would bind our fates. Forever." Her voice dropped, fierce with promise and warning. "I will not force you. The choice is yours." She stood, a silhouette against the golden light, leaving him with a single, tremulous hope, fragile yet burning bright amidst the gathering storm. The sanctum of union was older than Lyrae's memory, sealed beneath the palace's foundations, carved around a relic that pulsed with a slow, living glow. In its heart stood the crystal, a monolith of shifting facets, deep as the sea, humming with ancient energy. The air was charged with a current that prickled the skin, raising gooseflesh along Marcus's bare arms and chest. Pale light flickered across his body, stark against the bruises and the bandage around his side. Elira stood beside him, regal in a simple white robe, her hair loose and shining, her eyes steady and unafraid. The chief medic hovered at the threshold, robes clutched in anxious fists. "I must protest, Sovereign. This ritual is irreversible. His cells will be rewritten by yours. You will share a bloodline, a fate. The bond will not break." Elira's gaze did not leave Marcus. "We know," she said quietly. The medic's voice sharpened. "He will be your consort in the eyes of the realm, a human woven into the royal line. There are risks." "Enough," Elira replied, a finality in her tone that brooked no argument. "The choice is his." Marcus felt a cold wind of apprehension at the medic's words, but he searched Elira's face and found there only calm, a fierce and fragile hope. "No pressure, right?" he tried, forcing a crooked smile. Her lips twitched. "Only the weight of an empire." He studied her, heart pounding. In that crystalline silence the questions flickered. What would he become? Would he still be Marcus, or something else entirely? But the alternative was certain death. He saw the fear she tried to hide, the plea she dared not voice. With a steadying breath, Marcus reached for her hand. "I trust you," he said softly. "Let's do it." She turned his hand over, pressing his palm to hers. Their skin tingled at the contact. Together, as the medic looked on with haunted eyes, they pressed their joined hands to the living crystal. A pulse, then fire. Agony exploded outward, white-hot, devouring thought and flesh and self. Marcus's scream echoed with Elira's, a single wordless note of pain as the crystal flared around them, swallowing their forms in a storm of light. His vision fractured, scattered into 1,000 memories not his own. He saw through Alira's eyes, a small girl in an endless palace, watched by tutors and shadows, yearning for a mother's touch. Duty pressed into her bones, each lesson another stone in the wall between her and the world. He tasted her isolation, the cold ache of nights spent tracing constellations through her window. The silent wish for someone who saw her, not just her crown. In turn, Illyra was swept into Marcus's world. Sun-warmed fields, laughter shared with friends, the taste of rain on his tongue, the ache of loss, the spark of hope. She felt his love for Earth's messy beauty, the certainty that justice mattered, his stubborn refusal to yield, his humor, even now, flickering in the darkness like a lamp against the storm. Pain receded, leaving a raw tenderness in its wake. The relic's glow dimmed to a soft pulse. Marcus sagged, breath ragged, sweat cold on his brow. Illyra steadied him, her touch different, intimate, known, as if he had always carried her within him. He looked up, dazed, and met her eyes. The connection between them was no longer merely physical. It thrummed in his blood, a double heartbeat, an unbroken melody. Illyra's lips parted, startled by the depth she found in his gaze. For a moment, neither spoke. The medic exhaled, shoulders slumping with relief and dread. "It is done," he murmured, bowing his head. Illyra's voice trembled. "Marcus?" He blinked, flexed his fingers. Strength surged through him, alien and exhilarating. "I'm here," he said. "I think I'm all here." They lingered in the sanctum's hush, joined now in a way that was both terrifying and wondrous. Marcus awoke in a chamber he recognized from memory, Illyra's private quarters, high above Vera. Sunlight filtered through diaphanous curtains, painting the ceiling in shifting gold. He inhaled deeply, surprised by the clarity of his senses. The subtle scent of lilies, the silken feel of the sheets, the faint echo of Illyra's consciousness brushing against his own thoughts. He moved, marveling at the absence of pain. His body felt renewed, stronger, lighter, different. When he sat up, he realized he was not alone. Illyra entered, simply dressed, a tray of food in her hands. Her bearing was regal even in repose, but her eyes softened when they met his. Behind her, Saren stood stiff and silent, disapproval etched in every line of his posture. Illyra dismissed her advisor with a look. Saren hesitated, then bowed sharply and vanished into the corridor. She set the tray on the low table beside Marcus's bed. "I thought you might be hungry," she said, the words tentative. He laughed, the sound ringing strangely in his ears, richer somehow, as if harmonized by another voice. "Starving, actually. Do all your rituals end with breakfast in bed?" A faint smile curved her lips. "Only the ones that defy the council and centuries of tradition." He reached for a piece of fruit, hesitated, then took a bite. Sweetness exploded on his tongue, then, unexpectedly, a second sensation. The flavor echoed back at him, sharper and brighter, tinged with Illyra's pleasure. He looked at her in surprise. "You felt that?" he murmured. She nodded, her cheeks flushed. "I taste what you taste. I feel what you feel. The bond is deeper than I imagined." He set the fruit down, sobered. "Is it always like this? So close?" Illyra met his gaze, serious. "It will grow easier, with time. We will learn to separate. For now, we share everything." As they ate together, the intimacy of the bond unfurled. Marcus found himself laughing at memories that were not quite his, savoring the taste of unfamiliar spices, even catching flashes of Illyra's emotions, her relief at his recovery, her lingering fear, her hope. Each time their hands brushed, a current ran between them, neither wholly his nor hers. Later, as Elira worked at a hollow terminal, her fingers dancing through projections of troop movements and diplomatic cables, Marcus moved to the window. Vera sprawled below, a city of floating spires and glimmering bridges, beautiful and strange. He closed his eyes, letting the hum of the city wash over him, content to be alive, to be changed. Then the pain struck. Not physical, but psychic, a spike of cold fire through the bond. He staggered, gripping the windowsill. Images not his own burst behind his eyes. Lord Careth, standing in a shadowed chamber, surrounded by conspirators. Words and intentions filtered through in fragments, plans for rebellion, for seizing the throne, for destroying all Elira had fought to save. He gasped, clutching his head. Elira whirled from her desk, alarm flooding her face. "Marcus, what's wrong?" He forced out the words. "Careth. I see him. His thoughts. His plans. It's like he's inside my head. No, I'm inside his. I can feel him plotting." Elira hurried to his side, gripping his shoulders. Fear and realization flashed across her features. The disruptor. There must have been a neural component, meant to dominate my mind. When the ritual rewrote your cells, it must have latched onto you. The bond amplified it. He met her eyes, understanding dawning. I'm a conduit. To Careth. To our enemy. Elira's jaw tightened, her resolve hardening. Then our bond is both blessing and weapon. We will use it. Marcus exhaled shakily, feeling Elira's presence steady him, anchoring his mind as the storm of foreign thoughts ebbed. Together, they stood at the edge of something vast and unknown, linked not only to each other, but to the danger that threatened everything they had become. Their fate, and Lyrae's, was now inextricably entwined. Marcus's world had become a suite of silken shadows and quiet tension. Elira's secluded wing, once reserved for solitude and contemplation, now bristled with guards and the hum of hidden defenses. Marcus paced the marbled corridor, restless energy coiling in his chest. Every movement was watched, every entrance sealed by an iris scan or a code, spoken in a language he could not decipher. The threat outside was real, but the greater danger, he knew, was already inside him. Lieutenant Sora, his security chief, appeared at dawn, her uniform immaculate, jaw set in determined lines. "Sir, this position is untenable," she said, voice pitched low. "Careth's influence is growing. We need to move you. Off-world if possible. Somewhere safe." Elira stood behind her, arms folded, eyes cool and unyielding. "He is not leaving," she said. "He is my consort, not a hostage or a liability." Sora's gaze flickered between them. "With respect, Sovereign, the Council is already unsettled by his presence. If something happens—" "It will not," Elira interrupted, stepping closer to Marcus. "He stays. Under my protection." Marcus caught Sora's eye, saw the concern there, the unspoken loyalty. "I appreciate it, Sora, but she's right. I need to be here." Sora hesitated, then nodded sharply and withdrew, her orders unsaid but understood. Once alone, Marcus let out a slow breath. That was almost diplomatic, he teased, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Elira arched a brow, her mouth softening. "You are learning." The truth was, Marcus no longer felt like a guest, or even quite himself. The bond thrummed inside him, Elira's consciousness a steady golden thread woven through his own thoughts. It was comfort and vulnerability both, a lifeline he clung to as they navigated the perilous psychic current binding him to Careth. They met in her study that evening, surrounded by maps and flickering displays of troop positions. Elira drew the curtains, shutting out the city's dizzying heights and the world beyond their sanctuary. "Ready?" she asked, voice gentle. He nodded, sitting cross-legged on the carpet. Elira knelt beside him, her presence grounding, her hands cool as she cupped his face. "I will guide you," she said. "If it becomes too much, tell me. I will not let you go." He shivered at her touch, nerves tingling where her fingers met his skin. "You sound like you've done this before?" She smiled, sadness flickering in her eyes. "No, but I trust us." He closed his eyes, reached inward. With Elira's hand pressed to his temple, the world narrowed to a point of golden light. He lowered his defenses, felt himself drift, then plummet into the psychic undertow. It was like stepping through a membrane, sensation warped, his thoughts blurring with alien ones. He caught glimpses, Kareth pacing a darkened command room surrounded by loyalists, a flash of blue uniform, the glint of a false insignia. Marcus's heart raced as images sharpened, rows of warships hidden in the fog of a merchant convoy, their true signatures masked. Orders hissed from Kareth's lips. "Vera at dawn. No witnesses. Strike when the shields drop." Elira's voice was in his mind, steady and sure. "Focus. Anchor on me. Pull back what matters." He clung to her presence, seized on the details, the ship names, the false routes, the code phrases. Each heartbeat brought a surge of information, the bond amplifying what was clear and burning away the noise. Then a jolt of pain, sharp as a live wire. Kareth's suspicion flared, a shadow passing through Marcus's awareness. He gasped, reeling. "Marcus, come back!" Elira's grip tightened. "Now!" He fought for control, dragged himself up through layers of thought until the world snapped back into focus. He was in the study, Elira's arms around him, her face inches from his own. "Did you get it?" she asked. He nodded, voice hoarse. "Kareth's moving ships, disguised as merchants. He'll attack at dawn, unless we stop him." She rose at once, relaying orders through her comm. Her loyalists, trusted pilots and captains, moved like lightning. Within the hour, reports returned. The hidden warships intercepted, their crews detained. The Council, already wary of her defiance, could not deny her prescience. Whispers of Elira's uncanny foresight spread, threading awe and unease through the halls of power. She returned to Marcus, kneeling beside him as he leaned against the cool glass of the window. "You did well," she murmured, brushing sweat from his brow. He managed a weak laugh. "Didn't think espionage was in the Envoy job description." Elira's hand lingered at his jaw. "You are much more than you were. Much more than they know." They worked together, night after night, refining their technique. Physical contact was their anchor, her hand at his temple, fingers entwined. Sometimes a simple brush of her lips at his brow to steady him when the visions grew too wild. Each session left them closer, their trust deepening with every memory shared, every secret unearthed. Marcus learned the shape of her fears, the depth of her hopes. She learned the stubbornness that had driven him across the stars, the humor he wielded like a shield. But victory brought consequences. Kareth was not blind to the intrusion. The link, once a conduit for stolen secrets, became a battlefield. It began with whispers, stray thoughts that crept in as Marcus slept. Then nightmares, burning cities. Elira's face twisted in anguish, his own body racked with pain that was not truly his. He would wake, shuddering, breathless, the taste of ashes on his tongue. One night, as Elira read reports at her desk, Marcus doubled over, clutching his side. A wave of agony crashed through him, flames licking along his nerves, phantom burns scalding his skin. He cried out, and Elira was at his side in an instant. "Marcus, what is it?" He shook his head, voice strangled. "Kareth. He knows. He's punishing me. Us." She pressed both hands to his face, summoning every shred of the bond's strength. "Hold on to me," she commanded. "I'm here." He clung to her presence, her mind a shield between him and the storm. The pain ebbed, but left him raw, hollowed out. For hours after he drifted, lost between waking and dream, her touch the only constant. The next day, Marcus wandered onto the terrace, drawn by the hush of midnight and the city's scattered lights. The air was cold, sharp with the scent of rain. Below, Vera shimmered, a field of blue and gold, peaceful in a way he could no longer feel. He leaned on the rail, staring down, exhaustion dragging at every limb. Footsteps approached, soft, measured. Elira joined him, silent at first, simply standing at his side. He did not turn. "I keep thinking it'll get easier. That I'll learn to fight him off." She reached for his hand, fingers lacing through his, their bond thrumming with shared fatigue and longing. "You are not alone in this. I won't let him break you." He closed his eyes, letting her strength flow through him. "Elira," he whispered, voice rough. The word was a plea and a promise all at once. She turned him gently to face her, her hand warm at his cheek. "Rest with me," she said. "Let me carry some of it." The city lights flickered behind them as, in the hush, the distance between them dissolved. Marcus pressed his forehead to hers, feeling her breath, her hope, her unwavering resolve. The pain receded, replaced by something gentler, affection blooming in the quiet, a fragile sanctuary in the storm. For the first time in days, Marcus let himself lean into her touch, drawing strength from the space where their souls entwined, and the night grew softer around them. Kareth, desperate and cornered, hurled the full might of his armada at Vera. The sky above the capital churned with black warships, their engines casting oily fire across the horizon. Alarms wailed through the palace corridors. Counselors, pale and shaken, gathered in trembling knots, voices rising in panicked argument. Yet within the sanctuary, where crystal walls turned chaos into refracted light, Elira and Marcus prepared for the oncoming storm. Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, his breathing steady but shallow. The link inside him thrummed like a live wire, Kareth's presence growing colder, more insistent with each passing moment. Elira knelt beside him, her hand warm at the back of his neck, her mind brushing against his thoughts in soothing waves. "He's coming," Marcus whispered, brow furrowed with strain. "Obsidian at the center. Heavy escorts. He's expecting us to bunker down." Elira nodded, her eyes hard as emerald. "We will not cower. I need everything you can find. Routes, weak points, command structure. Can you hold the channel?" He managed a grim smile. "I'll try. Just keep me anchored." Elira squeezed his shoulder, then stood, gathering her cloak about her. Her generals assembled in the war chamber, a ring of veterans and strategists, faces drawn with sleepless fear. At the head of the table, Admiral Vin saluted, her voice taut. "Sovereign, our fleet is outnumbered 3-1. If the shield fails, Vera will fall. Your plan is bold. If it fails—" "It will not," Elira interrupted, her tone steel. "We strike where Kareth is blind. Marcus sees through him. We use this." A murmur of dissent rippled through the officers. Vin glanced at Marcus, uncertain. "With respect, Sovereign, he is not Liraean." Elira's voice rose, cold and clear. "He is my consort, and he risks more than any of us. We trust him. On my reign. On my life." Silence fell. One by one, the generals inclined their heads. The plan was set. The Aurora, royal flagship, hung in the upper stratosphere, its hull agleam with energy shields. On the command bridge, Elira stood at the prow, flanked by officers at their stations. Marcus, pale but resolute, sat at the intelligence console, a neural band pressed to his temple. The link hummed, sharper than ever, a needle of presence threading his consciousness to Kareth's. He flinched as alien thoughts crashed into his mind. He's closing in. Obsidian is masking in the debris field, port side. He's keeping his carriers behind, using decoys on the flank. Wait, he's signaling a feint at Sector 7, but the real push is through the supply corridor. Elira's voice cut through the tension. Relay to squadrons. Scatter. Draw his main line thin. Strike at the flanks and supply ships. Ignore the decoys. If Obsidian moves, I want eyes on her. Her orders flashed through the command net, and the fleet obeyed. Lerayan ships broke formation, streaming through the clouds in darting clusters, baiting Kareth's cruisers away from their precious supply vessels. The council watched from the palace, fear and awe mingling as Elira's foresight turned the tide. Marcus hunched over the console, sweat beading on his brow. He knows something's wrong. He's starting to search for the leak. Obsidian's engines ignited, a black spear plunging through the chaos. Kareth's thoughts sharpened, cold with fury. Brace for direct assault, Elira ordered. Divert fire to Obsidian's escorts. We isolate him, then strike. The battle raged. On every screen, ships flared and vanished, shields buckled and rebuilt. Marcus strained to keep the channel open, relaying each shift in Kareth's formation, every flicker of intent. It felt as though he were holding back an ocean with his bare hands. Suddenly, a surge of pressure slammed into his mind. Kareth's will, no longer content to observe, now lashing out in force. Marcus's vision blurred, his hands locked on the console, fingers white with strain, his breath hitched. Marcus! Elira moved to his side, concern sharpening into fear. He tried to answer, but his body was no longer his own. Through his eyes, Kareth saw the bridge, the shield controls, the Admiral's codes, Elira's every movement. Marcus's hands moved of their own accord, reaching for the shield terminal. No. Please, Marcus screamed within, but the command was drowned by Kareth's voice. Lower the shields. Let the fleet in. End this, human. Elira seized him, both hands cradling his head, her voice urgent in his ear. Fight him, Marcus. You are not his. You are mine. His consciousness flickered, Kareth's presence an iron weight. Elira's mind wrapped around his, grounding him. Her words were a lifeline. You are more than his puppet. Remember who you are. Remember us. He tried to summon order, discipline, logic, the rules of war. Kareth crushed each one. But beneath the surface, something more turbulent churned. Memories of home, the sting of loss, laughter with friends, the aching need to protect Elira, the way her hand felt in his. Love, chaos, fear, devotion. Marcus let go of the barriers, let all of it surge forward. A tide of wild, unpredictable feeling that no Lyrian training could contain. The link convulsed. Kareth recoiled, unprepared for the onslaught. Emotion poured through Marcus. Grief, anger, hope, the messy human storm of it. Kareth tried to shape it, but it slipped through his grasp, raw and ungovernable. Elira's grip tightened. Yes, use it. Give him everything. Marcus shouted, a wordless cry that echoed through the psychic channel. He flooded the connection with memories, his father's laughter, the bittersweet sting of first love, terror and triumph in equal measure. The power of it broke like a wave. Kareth screamed, the sound splitting through Marcus's mind. The control shattered. Marcus's body spasmed, then slumped against Elira. On the main screen, Obsidian veered wildly, shields flickering. Fire lanced across the dreadnought's hull, then a catastrophic eruption, the flagship falling silent as her command vanished. On the bridge, silence fell. The rebellion collapsed. Kareth's ships, leaderless and scattered, surrendered or fled. The sky over Vera cleared, the city's defenders cheering as news spread. Illyra knelt beside Marcus, cradling him in her arms as he trembled, spent but alive. She pressed her forehead to his, breath mingling with his, her voice a whisper in the hush. "You saved us," she murmured, pride and relief mingling in her eyes. "You saved me." Marcus managed a weary smile, feeling her love thrum through the bond. We saved each other. In the aftermath, as the aurora turned toward the dawn and the world below began to heal, Illyra and Marcus remained together on the bridge, bound not just by duty, but by the storm they had weathered, and the hope that now flickered, bright and unbreakable, between them. In the aftermath, as the embers of battle faded and the city of Vera stirred with the breath of a new dawn, the High Council assembled beneath the crystalline vault of the throne hall. The chamber was stripped of ornament, the air shorn of ceremonial pomp. Gone were the golden banners and the swelling chords of processional hymns. Today, the truth of Lyrae's future would not be dressed in finery. Illyra entered in a simple robe of white, unadorned, her hair braided loosely down her back. Marcus walked beside her, no longer the awkward envoy, but her consort, his presence steady and unflinching. They moved as one, the subtle echo of their bond humming between them, visible only in the closeness of their steps, the quiet confidence in their joined hands. Counselors rose as she approached, eyes darting between the sovereign and the human who stood with her. At their flanks, the last of Kareth's followers, those who had not fled into the night, stood with hands bound, heads bowed in defeat. Others, once vocal critics of Marcus's place at court, watched in uneasy silence. Illyra stopped at the dais, pausing with Marcus at her right. Her gaze swept the assembly, neither accusatory nor pleading, but unwavering. She let the silence linger, demanding the attention of every mind in the hall. "Our world has survived the storm," she began, her voice clear and resonant. "Not through the strength of tradition, nor the walls we have built between ourselves and others. Lyrae endures because we found the courage to change, to reach out, to trust in what was unknown and untried." A ripple of discomfort moved through the council, some faces hardening, others softening with dawning understanding. She continued, "Kareth's rebellion was born from fear, a fear that difference would poison our blood, our culture, our future. But it was fear, not difference, that nearly destroyed us. It was faith in the outsider, in what he could bring, that saved us." She turned to Marcus, drawing him gently forward until they stood together at the front of the dais, their fingers entwined in a public, unmistakable sign of unity and love. "This is Marcus, human, consort, partner. His heart and bravery shielded me, shielded all of Lyrae, when tradition alone could not. He is no longer a scandal. He is our future." The words hung in the air like a challenge and a promise. Marcus felt the weight of 1,000 eyes, the pulse of skepticism, the spark of hope. For the first time, he did not shrink from the scrutiny. He squeezed Illyra's hand, letting her strength flow through him, and saw the counselors begin to shift, to look at him not as a threat, but as a symbol of what could be. Illyra's voice rang out, resolute. "From this day, Lyrae's strength will be found in connection, not isolation. Our bond, of blood, of spirit, of heart, will shape a new era. We will welcome those who seek to join us, not as lesser, but as partners. The line of succession, the council itself, our alliances, they will be founded on shared strength, not fear." The High Oracle, standing at the edge of the dais, gave a single, solemn nod. The counselors, one by one, bowed their heads in acceptance, or at least in recognition that the world had changed and would not change back. The assembly dissolved slowly, voices low, the mood a mixture of uncertainty and reluctant hope. As the last of the counselors filed out, a few approached Marcus and Elira directly, some offering brief words of respect, others only a wary nod. But the tide had turned. In Marcus's eyes, Elira saw the spark of a new future reflected. A world where love and loyalty, not bloodlines and suspicion, would guide the throne. Later, when the sun had dipped behind Vera's distant spires and the city glowed in soft blues and golds, Marcus stood on the balcony of Elira's private chambers, the wind teasing at his hair. He leaned on the crystal balustrade, gaze drifting over the city's luminous veins, feeling the hum of its renewed life. Elira slipped out of the shadows, wrapping her arms around him from behind, her cheek pressed gently to his back. She breathed in the scent of him, the lingering adrenaline now replaced by a deep, quiet peace. "Is this how it always ends?" Marcus murmured, hands covering hers. "Political turmoil, world saved, and then this?" She smiled against his spine, her voice playful and soft. "For Lyre's sovereign, rarely. For me, I hope so." He squeezed her hands, letting the warmth of her presence seep through him. The bond, once an urgent tether, now pulsed with comfort. A resonance that soothed rather than demanded, a promise rather than a chain. After a pause, Elira teased, "Your mind is noisy, Marcus. Even when you're quiet. Are all humans so loud inside?" He laughed, turning to face her, their bodies close in the golden dusk. "It's part of our charm. You should hear us in a crowd, complete chaos. You're lucky you only get me." She arched a brow, mischief glinting in her eyes. "Lucky is not the word I would use." He drew her into his arms, forehead resting against hers. "What would you call it then?" She pretended to ponder, eyes alight. Terrifying. Maddening. Irreplaceable. He kissed her softly, laughter mingling with relief. "I'll take irreplaceable." They stood in the hush, the world sprawling beneath them, and for a moment the burdens of rule, the wounds of war, faded into insignificance. The city's lights shimmered, a living reflection of their bond, fragile and enduring. Elira's arms tightened around him, and Marcus leaned into her, content in the quiet certainty that whatever the future held, they would face it together. With the weight of the world softened by their closeness, they watched the cities glow, hearts steady, hope blooming quietly between them as the night unfurled. Time passed. The bruises of rebellion faded into stories told beneath banners of peace, and the realm of Lyre found its balance once more. Elira's rule, once contested and fragile, grew solid as the crystal pillars of Vera itself. Her reforms, open council, new trade, and the promise of unity took root. The people spoke of her with cautious pride, and in the markets, the name Marcus was no longer a scandal whispered in corners, but a symbol uttered with hope. Their bond, once forbidden, became legend, a beacon rising above old divisions, a living testament that difference could be strength. Lyre's children learned that the sovereign's heart was shared with an outsider, and that unity was not surrender, but a promise fulfilled. Marcus moved through the palace with an easy grace, still marked as other by his earthborn features, yet welcomed for the very things that set him apart. Court intrigue became his daily trial, secret alliances behind silk curtains, coded gestures exchanged in garden alcoves, the unspoken currents of rivalry and ambition. Yet Marcus, with his quick wit and stubborn empathy, disarmed the wary. He listened where others dictated, questioned where others presumed. His perspective cut through centuries of ritual, sometimes upending tradition, sometimes softening it. What he lacked in heritage, he made up for in heart. Elira watched him navigate her world with both amusement and admiration. At council feasts, she would find his hand beneath the table, warm, steady, grounding her through the ceaseless parade of toasts and speeches. He would lean close, breath stirring the fine hairs at her temple, whispering, "Remind me which counselor is secretly plotting to steal the dessert cart tonight?" She would smother her laughter behind a cup of wine, emerald eyes sparkling with mischief and love. Sometimes, in the press of politics, their connection was silent. A glance across the council chamber, a fleeting touch as they passed in the corridor, a single pulse through the bond that said everything words could not. The Lorraean elite, once scandalized by their closeness, now envied it, seeing in them a unity that made the throne unassailable. In the quiet hours after dusk, Elira and Marcus walked the palace gardens beneath the glow of bioluminescent blooms. There, away from prying eyes, words became unnecessary. They spoke through the bond, memories and feelings braided together, each thought a caress, each silence comfortable. Elira would slip her hand into Marcus's, grounding herself in his presence. He would brush his thumb over her knuckles, sending waves of reassurance and devotion. Sometimes she would pause, pulling him close, and he would press a kiss to her brow, the world's burdens melting away. Their connection deepened in ways neither had anticipated. Marcus could sense the heaviness in Elira's heart before she spoke of it. Diplomatic failures, the slow resistance of tradition, the ache of leadership. He learned to soothe her with a look, a touch, a whispered joke that pulled a reluctant smile from her lips. Likewise, she felt his anxieties, his fear of not belonging, of being resented or misunderstood. With a single thought, she would send him calm, wrapping her mind around his like a shield. They became partners in more than love. Together, they navigated the complexities of rebuilding a realm, negotiating with old rivals, welcoming new allies, offering asylum to those once cast out. Marcus's humanity proved an unpredictable force, upending rigid protocol with gestures of kindness that won enemies and allies alike. When he argued that the markets be open to human traders, Elira listened, and the council, seeing her trust in him, followed. The palace changed too. Lorraean and human servants mingled in the kitchens. Children from both worlds played in the courtyards, their laughter echoing off ancient stone. Even the High Oracle, once a stern guardian of tradition, offered a blessing for the union that had reshaped the world. On the eve of a ceremony marking the hard-won peace, the palace glowed with anticipation. Elira stood before her mirror, hair cascading down her back, her robe a shimmering river of blue. Marcus moved behind her, hands steady as he lifted the coronet, no longer a mere relic of power, but a symbol of new beginnings. He fastened it gently into her hair, fingers lingering for a moment against her skin. Their eyes met in the mirror. Elira's gaze was luminous, centuries of duty and memory shining in their depths. Marcus's was clear, full of hope and the promise of tomorrow. A hush settled between them, heavy with meaning. Elira's voice trembled with the truth of their journey. "We are no longer alone," she whispered, her hand rising to cover his. He turned her gently, his palms resting at her waist, drawing her close. Their foreheads touched, breath mingling. "Whatever comes," he murmured, "I choose you. Not because of the bond, but because I love you." Emotion shimmered in Elira's eyes, gratitude, wonder, defiance. She reached up, fingers threading through his hair, and kissed him. The kiss was not hurried or desperate, but full of promise, a vow spoken without words, a claim on a future forged together. When they parted, the city beyond their window glimmered, and the first light of dawn began to brush the spires with gold. Hand in hand, Elira and Marcus stepped through the doors and into the world that awaited them. The palace was alive with color and hope, musicians tuning strings, banners unfurling, counselors and citizens gathering to witness the start of something new. Together, sovereign and consort, warrior and protector, partners and lovers, they descended the grand staircase. As they emerged onto the sunlit terrace above the gathered crowds, Elira paused, letting Marcus's presence steady her. The past, the pain and suspicion, the battles fought and lost, fell away, transformed by the love and courage that had carried them this far. With the dawn at their backs and the future opening before them, Elira and Marcus stepped forward to greet their people. Their hands were joined, their hearts in harmony. In that moment, the past was redeemed, and the promise of tomorrow was theirs, together.